The great hall of Vela Prime was filled with light. Thousands of beings from 12 different species sat in circles that rose toward the ceiling like steps. They spoke in many languages, but the translation machines made every word clear. This was the Galactic Assembly, where the rulers of the galaxy met to decide the future. Una stood in the shadows near the back. She was young for a Vellani, with silver skin and large dark eyes that saw more than most. Her job was simple. She worked in the archives, reading old files and organizing ancient data. Nobody important ever noticed her. But Una had found something that changed everything she believed. 3 days ago, she had opened a sealed vault in the deepest part of the archive. Inside were recordings so old that the machines almost could not read them. She had worked through the night to restore them. What she saw made her heart beat fast. Humans. The recordings showed creatures with soft skin and small eyes. They walked on 2 legs and had hair on their heads. They built cities of glass and metal. They flew ships through the stars. They laughed. They cried. They fought with a fire that Una had never seen in any species. Every child in the galaxy knew the stories about humans. They were called the Wanderers from the 3rd star. Ancient texts described them as fierce and strange, beings who could adapt to any world and survive any danger. But the texts also said they were gone, dead, extinct. 3,000 years ago, all contact with their home system had stopped. The Great Silence, historians called it. Nobody knew why. Most believed humans had destroyed themselves, as violent species often did. Una did not believe this anymore. She had taken her findings to Elder ToThem, the chief archivist. He was old and tired, with scales that had turned gray with age. He had looked at her recordings for only a moment before pushing them away. "Corrupted data," he said. "The humans are gone, child. Do not waste your time on ghosts." But Una knew what she had seen. Those were not ghosts. Those were people. A whole civilization, hidden in the old files, waiting to be remembered. Now she stood in the Great Hall, watching the assembly argue about something far more urgent than old recordings. The Dravari had returned. Una felt cold when she heard the name. The Dravari were not like other species. They did not talk or trade or make treaties. They consumed. Their ships were alive, made of metal and flesh twisted together. They moved from world to world, eating everything: plants, animals, people. Nothing was left behind except empty rock. Long ago, the Concord had pushed them beyond the galactic rim. Everyone thought they were gone forever. But 3 weeks ago, they had appeared at the border. They had already eaten 2 colony worlds. Millions of lives gone in days. "Our fleets cannot hold them," said Ambassador Hera of the Telosi. She was tall and thin, with 4 arms that moved when she spoke. "We need to retreat and protect the core worlds. If we retreat, we lose everything beyond the inner systems," another ambassador argued. "Billions will die." The arguing continued. Una stopped listening. She was thinking about the recordings. In one of them, she had seen humans fighting something. The images were damaged, but she could see their ships firing, their soldiers standing against a dark wave. They had not run. They had not surrendered. They had fought until the recording ended. What happened to them? Where did they go? A sound interrupted her thoughts. Every screen in the great hall flickered. The ambassadors stopped talking. A message appeared, written in symbols that the translation machine struggled to read. "What is that?" someone asked. Una's breath stopped. She recognized those symbols. She had seen them in the old recordings. "It is a distress beacon," a technician announced. "Coming from the Sol system." The hall went silent. Sol, the home of the humans. The quarantine zone that no ship had entered for 3,000 years. That is impossible, Elder ToThem said. His voice was shaking. There is nothing there. The humans are dead. The beacon kept pulsing. It was old technology, ancient by galactic standards. But it was active. Someone had turned it on. Una pushed forward through the crowd. Her hearts were pounding. She reached the console and began working, her fingers moving fast. "What are you doing?" ToThem demanded. "Translating," she said. The symbols on the screen changed. Words appeared, simple and clear. "We are still here. We remember. Do you?" The great hall erupted in chaos. Ambassadors shouted. Guards moved toward the exits. But Una stood still, staring at the message. The humans were not dead. They were not ghosts or myths or corrupted data. They were alive. They had been waiting, silent and hidden, for 3,000 years. And now, with the Dravari burning their way toward the core worlds, the humans had chosen to speak. Una did not know if this was good news or bad. The old text described humans as dangerous, unpredictable, impossible to control. But they also described them as survivors, as fighters, as beings who never gave up, no matter the odds. She looked at the message one more time. "We are still here. We remember." For the first time since the Dravari returned, Una felt something strange in her chest. It took her a moment to recognize it. Hope. The border world of HFY was burning. From orbit, the planet looked sick. Dark clouds covered the surface where Dravari ships had landed. The swarm was eating everything: forests, cities, the very soil itself. Millions of Vellani refugees crowded into the last protected zone, waiting for rescue ships that might never come. The Concord fleet held position above the planet, but everyone knew the truth. They were losing. Every hour, the Dravari pushed closer to the shield generators. When those fell, nothing would stop them. Far from the battle, in a conference room on Vela Prime, the ambassadors argued about something else entirely. "We cannot send ships to Sol," Ambassador Hira said firmly. "Every vessel is needed here. The humans, if they even exist, are not our concern." "But the beacon," Una said. She had been allowed into the meeting only because Elder ToThem was too frightened to come. "They are reaching out to us. After 3,000 years of silence, they are reaching out." "That must mean something." "It means nothing," Hira replied. "It could be a trap. It could be automated. The humans were dangerous, young one. The old records are clear about this. They nearly destroyed themselves with their wars. Perhaps they wished to destroy us as well." Una wanted to argue, but she did not have the words. She was just an archivist. What did she know about war and diplomacy? But she knew what she had seen in those recordings. Humans building, humans healing, humans holding hands and looking at the stars with wonder in their eyes. They were not monsters. They were people. Complex and strange. Yes. But people. In the end, the assembly made a compromise. A small fleet of 5 ships would travel to Sol, not to make contact, just to observe. To see if the beacon was real. It was a weak decision, but it was something. Una asked to go with them. To her surprise, they said yes. Nobody else wanted the job. The journey to Sol took 6 days through slipspace. Una spent most of that time reading everything she could find about humans. The old texts described their history, thousands of years of war and peace, of rise and fall. They had nearly killed their own planet before learning to heal it. They had reached for the stars with primitive rockets, then with faster ships, then with technology that rivaled the Concord Zone. And then they had gone silent. The Great Silence began exactly 3,247 years ago. One day, human ships were everywhere, trading, exploring, sometimes fighting. The next day, They were gone. All communication stopped. Ships that entered the Sol system never returned. Eventually, the Concorde declared the area quarantined and tried to forget. But why? What had happened? The fleet dropped out of slip space at the edge of the Sol system. Una stood on the bridge of the lead ship, her eyes wide. By the ancestors, the captain whispered. Sol was not empty. It was fortified. Massive stations orbited every planet. Weapons platforms hung in the darkness like sleeping giants. Ships moved in organized patterns, thousands of them, more than Una could count. And at the center of it all, the third planet from the star gleamed blue and green and alive. Earth, the human homeworld. Not dead, not destroyed. Thriving. An alarm sounded. A ship was approaching a human ship. It was smaller than their vessels, but moved with a grace that made Una's breath catch. The design was beautiful. All clean lines and hidden power. Unknown vessels. This is Captain Dohwan of the Terran Defense Coalition ship Baekdu. The voice came through clearly, speaking in perfect galactic standard. You have entered restricted space. State your purpose or leave immediately. The captain of the Concorde fleet responded with shaking words, explaining the beacon, the Dravari, the desperate situation in the galaxy. There was a long pause. Hold your position, Captain Dohwan said. I am coming aboard. An hour later, Una stood face to face with her first human. Dohwan was not what she expected. He was shorter than her, with dark hair cut close to his head and eyes that seemed to see everything at once. He wore a simple uniform with no decorations. His face showed no emotion, but his eyes were old. Older than his body. They carried the weight of something heavy. 3,000 years, he said quietly, looking around the ship. 3,000 years, and this is how we meet again. Why did you hide? Una asked. She could not stop herself. Why did you leave? Dohwan looked at her for a long moment. Because the galaxy taught us a lesson, he said. We came to you with open hands, wanting friendship. You taught us that open hands get cut off. Una felt shame, though she did not fully understand why. We were betrayed, Dohwan continued. Hunted. Species we thought were friends tried to wipe us out because we grew too fast, learned too quickly. So we left. We sealed our borders and prepared. Prepared for what? Dohwan smiled, but there was no warmth in it. For the day we would need to fight again. And now that day has come. He turned to the captain. Show me everything you have on the Dravari. 4 hours later, after reviewing all the data, Captain Dohwan made a call to Earth. Una did not understand the language he spoke. It was Old Korean. She learned later, but she understood the tone. He was asking for permission. The answer came quickly. Dohwan closed the communication and faced them. The Terran Defense Coalition has made a decision. We will not ignore suffering, even the suffering of those who abandoned us. A fleet is being assembled. We will meet you at HFY in 3 days. Una felt tears forming in her eyes. Thank you, she whispered. Dohwan shook his head. Do not thank us yet. You have not seen what humans do in war. He paused at the door. We do not forget. We do not forgive easily. But we also do not turn away when innocent people are dying. That is not who we are. He left. The Concorde fleet turned back toward HFY, carrying a message that would change the galaxy. The humans were coming. The shields of HFY were failing. Una watched from the observation deck of a Concorde cruiser as another generator exploded on the planet below. The Dravari swarm pushed closer to the last refugee camp. Millions of people huddled inside a shrinking circle of protection, waiting to die. We have to retreat, the Concorde admiral said. His voice was tired and broken. There is nothing more we can do. Around him, captains nodded in agreement. Their ships were damaged. Their weapons were running low. The Dravari seemed endless for. Every ship they destroyed, 10 more appeared from the dark. Una wanted to scream at them. 3 more days, she thought. The humans said 3 days. We just need to hold for 3 more days. But she was nobody, an archivist. Her voice meant nothing here. Begin evacuation of all military vessels, the admiral ordered. Civilian transports will follow if there is time. If there is time. Una knew what that meant. The civilians would be left behind. She ran to a communication console and began transmitting. She sent everything, all her research, all the recordings, all the proof that humans were real and coming. She sent it toward Seoul, toward any human ship that might be listening. Please, she whispered, please hurry. The Concorde fleet began to pull away. On the planet below, people looked up at the sky and saw their protectors abandoning them. Some cried, some prayed, some simply held their children and waited. Then the sky tore open. Una had never seen anything like it. Space itself seemed to crack, and from the crack came light burning, terrible light. Ships emerged from the brightness, black as night with engines that blazed like stars. They came in formations so precise they looked like a single organism. At the front was the largest ship Una had ever seen. It was shaped like a blade, long and sharp and deadly. On its side, in letters that burned with inner fire, was a name, Jirison. A voice filled every communication channel. It was a woman's voice, calm and hard as stone. This is Admiral Sujin of the Terran Defense Coalition, Dreadnought Jirison. Concorde vessels, you may leave or you may stay. Either way, we are going in. All civilian ships, move to the following coordinates. We will protect you. Dravari forces. The voice paused, and when it returned, it was colder than space itself. You should not have come back. The human fleet moved forward. Una had read about human tactics in the old texts. She thought she understood what they meant when they called humans aggressive. She was wrong. The human ships did not fight like the Concorde. They did not hold defensive lines or wait for the enemy to make mistakes. They attacked. They pushed into the heart of the Dravari swarm like a knife into flesh. Their weapons fired in patterns that seemed random but hit with perfect accuracy. The Dravari tried to surround them. The humans broke through. The Dravari tried to overwhelm them with numbers. The humans adapted, splitting into smaller groups that struck and vanished and struck again. Impossible, the Concorde Admiral whispered. That is impossible, but it was happening, right there, before their eyes. On the planet's surface, something else was happening. Una watched in amazement as small craft dropped from the human ship's metal. Pods that screamed through the atmosphere like falling stars. They hit the ground near the refugee camp, and soldiers poured out. They were humans in armor, carrying weapons that glowed with energy. They formed lines around the civilians and began pushing back the Dravari ground forces. Sergeant Taiwu was one of them. He was not a tall man, but he moved like water, smooth and fast and impossible to stop. His rifle fired in short bursts, each shot finding its target. Around him, his squad followed his lead, trusting him with their lives. A Dravari beast-ate. Legs, razor teeth, eyes that burned with hunger charged at a group of Valani children. Taiwu was there before it reached them. He did not shoot. There was no time. He pulled a blade from his belt and met the creature head-on. When he stood up, the beast was dead at his feet. Move to the evacuation point, he ordered the children. His voice was gentle, even as blood dripped from his armor. Go now, we will protect you. The children ran. Taiwu turned back to the fight. Above the planet, Admiral Sujin commanded the battle like a conductor leading music. She gave orders. In a calm voice, never raising her tone, never showing fear. Her crew trusted her completely. Jirison, forward batteries, target the command vessel, she said. All cruisers, cover our flanks. Do not let them surround us. The Dravari Queen, a massive ship at the center of the swarm, pulsing with sick light, tried to escape. The Garrison followed. You remember us, Sujin said softly, watching the Queen's ship run. Good. The battle lasted 7 hours. When it was over, the Dravari had retreated. Not destroyed. There were too many for that, but pushed back, wounded, frightened. The skies of Keth-4 were clear for the first time in weeks. On the ground, human medics moved through the refugee camp. Lieutenant Jiyeon was one of them. She was small and quick, with kind eyes and steady hands. She treated Vellani wounds with the same care she would give her own people. A Vellani elder watched her work. Why? He asked. Why do you help us? Your people owe us nothing. Jiyeon looked up from her patient. Because you are hurt, she said simply. That is enough reason. The elder had no response to that. In orbit, Yuna finally found her voice. She sent a message to the Garrison, asking to come aboard. To her shock, the answer was yes. She stood on the bridge an hour later, surrounded by humans. They looked at her with curious eyes, but no hostility. Admiral Sujin turned from the viewport to face her. You sent the transmission, Sujin said. It was not a question. Yes, you believed we would come, even when your leaders had given up. Yuna nodded. The old texts said humans never abandon those in need. I believe the texts were true. Sujin smiled a small smile, tired but real. The texts were right. She turned back to the viewport, looking at the stars. But this is not over. The Dravari will return. They always do. As if answering her words, a new signal appeared on the screens. A transmission from the Dravari Queen, directed not at the Concorde, but at the human fleet. We remember you, the message said. The soft ones who became hard. We ate your worlds once. We will eat them again. Why do you return? Sujin pressed a button and responded. Because you are here, and where you are, we will follow. Until the end. The message ended. The bridge was silent. Yuna realized something in that moment. The humans had not come out of hiding because they were asked. They had come because they had been waiting for this. Waiting for the chance to finish what was started 3,000 years ago. The war was just beginning. The war room of the Garrison was quiet. Maps of the galaxy covered the walls, marked with red lines showing Dravari movement. There was a lot of red. Yuna sat at a table across from Admiral Sujin. Between them were cups of something hot that the humans called tea. It was bitter, but Yuna found she liked it. You want to know the truth, Sujin said. It was not a question. The Admiral had a way of seeing through people, of knowing what they wanted before they spoke. Yes, Yuna admitted. The old texts tell us humans vanished. They did not tell us why. Sujin was silent for a moment. Her eyes were distant, looking at something Yuna could not see. Finally, she spoke. 3,000 years ago, humanity reached for the stars. We were young and foolish. We thought everyone would welcome us. She laughed softly, but there was no joy in the sound. We were wrong. What happened? We grew too fast. We learned too quickly. We adapted to worlds that should have killed us. Other species became afraid. Sujin's hands tightened around her cup. Fear turns to hate very easily. A coalition formed species you would know, species that sit in your Concorde today. They decided humans were too dangerous to exist. Yuna felt cold. They attacked you? They tried to wipe us out. Our colonies burned. Our people died. We fought back, but we were outnumbered. Eventually, we had only one choice: run or die. Sujin looked directly at Yuna. We chose to run. But we also chose to remember. And to prepare. For 3,000 years? For as long as it took? Sujin stood and walked to a window. Outside, stars burned in the black. We knew the Dravari would return. They were the ones who started it all, you know. Before the coalition turned against us, the Dravari came to Earth. They ate 3 continents before we stopped them. That was when the other species began to fear us, when they saw what we could do when pushed to the edge. Yuna understood now. The Great Silence was not a mystery. It was a wound, a scar that humanity had carried for 30 centuries. Why help us now? She asked. After everything that was done to you? Sujin turned back to face her. Because we are not what they made us. We could have become monsters, Yuna. We could have spent 3,000 years planning revenge. Some wanted that. But we chose differently. She paused. We chose to be better. To prove that humans are not just survivors. We are protectors. Even of those who hurt us. A door opened, and Lieutenant Jian entered. She looked tired. She had been working in the medical bay for days without rest. But she smiled when she saw Yuna. The Villani refugees are stable, she reported. We saved most of them. Most? Sujin asked. Jian's smile faded. We lost 47. The wounds were too severe. She paused. But we saved 8,000. 8,000 people who would be dead without us. Yuna felt something break inside her. These humans, these people her ancestors had tried to destroy, had crossed the galaxy to save her kind. They lost their own people doing it. And they called it a victory because they saved more than they lost. How do you keep going? Yuna asked. How do you fight when you know you will lose people? Jian sat down beside her. Because the alternative is worse. If we do nothing, everyone dies. If we fight, some die, but others live. We fight for the ones who live. It was so simple. So human. The door opened again. Captain Dohwan entered, his face grim. Admiral, we have a problem. The Dravari are gathering. All of them. Every swarm in the galaxy is moving toward Seoul. The room went silent. Sujin closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, her face was calm. They want to finish what they started. They want to destroy Earth. Can we stop them? Yuna asked. We will try, Sujin said. That is all we can ever do. The next 3 days were chaos. Human ships moved in constant motion, preparing for the battle to come. Yuna tried to help where she could, but mostly she watched. She watched humans say goodbye to each other, not knowing if they would meet again. She watched them laugh and cry and hold each other. She watched them prepare to die. Sergeant Taiwu found her on the observation deck. You should not be here, he said. When the battle starts, this section will be dangerous. I know, Yuna replied. But I wanted to see the stars. They are beautiful. Taiwu looked out at the darkness. Yes, they are. He was quiet for a moment. I have a mission tomorrow. Strike team. We are going to hit the Dravari Queen's ship directly. Yuna felt her heart squeeze. That sounds impossible. Probably. Taiwu smiled. It was a real smile, warm and sad at the same time. But someone has to try. And I would rather die fighting than hiding. Are you afraid? He thought about it. Yes, but fear is not the opposite of courage. Fear is what makes courage possible. My grandmother taught me that. Your grandmother? She lived through hard times, wars, suffering, but she never gave up. She used to sing me a song when I was small, an old folk song about mountains and rivers that last forever. His eyes went soft with memory. I think about her when I am afraid. She survived so I could exist. The least I can do is make her proud. Yuna did not know what to say. She reached out and touched his hand. He did not pull away. Thank you, she whispered. For everything? Taiwu nodded. Take care of yourself, Archivist. When this is over, someone will need to write the story. Make sure you tell the truth." He left. Yuna never saw him alive again. The strike mission launched the next day. Taiwu and his team fought their way into the Queen's ship. They planted explosives at the core, but the Dravari were waiting for them. One by one, the team fell. In the end, only Taiwu was left. He was wounded, bleeding, surrounded by enemies. The explosives were set, but someone had to stay behind to make sure they went off. He opened the communication channel. His voice was calm, even as death closed around him. "Jirison, this is Taiwu. Charges are set. Beginning final countdown." On the bridge, Admiral Sujin closed her eyes. "Understood, Sergeant. It has been an honor." "The honor was mine, Admiral." Then, softly, Taiwu began to sing. It was the song his grandmother had taught him, old words in Old Korean, about mountains that stand forever and rivers that never stop flowing. The explosives detonated. The Queen's ship shattered. The Dravari swarm faltered, their connection to their leader broken. For a moment, the battle turned. But even as the humans celebrated, a new signal came through. The Queen had survived. She had escaped to another ship, and her voice echoed across the galaxy. "The soft ones have drawn blood. All swarms, all of us, converge on Seoul. We end this now." The final battle was coming. The Sol system had never seen so many ships. Dravari swarms filled the sky like a dark ocean. Millions of vessels, each one hungry for death, moved toward Earth. The blue planet hung in space like a jewel, and every creature in the swarm wanted to consume it. But Earth was not alone. The human fleet formed a wall between the swarm and their home. The Jirison led the formation, its weapons charged and ready. Around it, thousands of ships waited, destroyers, cruisers, fires, everything humanity had built during 3,000 years of preparation. Admiral Sujin stood on the bridge, watching the enemy approach. Her face was calm, but her eyes burned with something ancient. This was the moment her people had been waiting for since the Great Silence began. "All ships," she said quietly. "Today we end this. Today we show the galaxy what humanity means." Far away on Vala Prime, Yuna stood before the Galactic Assembly. The Great Hall was silent. Every ambassador, every representative, every leader in the Concord watched her. She was small and young and terrified. But she had something to say, and she would say it. "I know what you are thinking," she began. "You are thinking about survival, about protecting your own people, about letting the humans fight alone because they are not your problem." She pressed a button and a recording played. It was Taiwu's final transmission, his calm voice, his grandmother's song, the explosion that killed him and saved thousands. "That man died for people he had never met," Yuna said. "People who belonged to species that tried to destroy his kind 3,000 years ago. He knew this. He fought anyway. He died anyway." She played another recording. Jian treating wounded Vellani children, her hands gentle, her voice soft. "These humans crossed the galaxy to save us. They lost soldiers and friends and family. They asked for nothing in return. They did it because it was right." Her voice grew stronger. "The old text called humans dangerous, unpredictable, violent, but I have seen the truth. Humans are not monsters. They are what we have forgotten to be. They are hope. They are courage. They are the fire that refuses to die." She looked across the hall at every face watching her. "The Dravari are going to attack Earth. If Earth falls, humanity ends. And if humanity ends, who will stand for the rest of us when the swarm comes for our worlds?" She paused. "I am going to Seoul. I am going to fight beside them. Not because I am brave, but because I cannot live with myself if I do nothing." She turned to leave. Behind her, silence stretched. Then a voice called out. Wait, it was Ambassador Hera, the careful diplomat, the one who had argued against helping humans from the beginning. You are right, Hera said slowly. We have been cowards. We have been fools. She stood. The Telosi fleet will go to Sol. Another ambassador stood. The Valani will go. Then another. And another. One by one, every species in the Concord rose. Not all of them, some stayed seated, too afraid to move. But enough. More than enough. By the time Una left the hall, the largest fleet in galactic history was assembling. The Battle of Sol began at dawn, Earth time. The Dravari came in waves endless, overwhelming waves. Human ships met them head-on, fighting for every kilometer of space. The Jirsan led charge after charge, its guns never stopping. Then the Concord fleet arrived. Ships of every design and species dropped out of slipspace, filling the gaps in the human lines. Valani cruisers flew beside Telosi destroyers. Ancient enemies fought side by side. For the first time in history, the galaxy was truly united. Admiral Sujin allowed herself one small smile. All ships, she broadcast. Welcome to Sol. Try to keep up. The battle raged for hours. Ships burned and died. Heroes fell, but the line held. Captain Dohan led the vanguard, his ship Baekdu dancing through enemy fire. Lieutenant Jian worked in the medical frigate Hallison, saving lives even as explosions shook the hull around her. Everywhere, humans and aliens fought together. The Dravari Queen grew desperate. Her swarm was dying faster than she could replace it. She ordered her flagship forward, aiming directly at Earth. If she could reach the planet, she could still win. Sujin saw her coming. All ships, focus fire on the Queen's vessel. Do not let her through. But the Queen was fast, and her ship was strong. She broke through the first line. Then the second. Earth grew larger in her view screen. Sujin made a decision. Jirsan full power to engines. We are going to intercept. Her crew did not hesitate. The great dreadnought surged forward, putting itself directly in the Queen's path. Admiral, her second officer said quietly, if we do this, we may not survive. I know. Sujin looked at her crew, the men and women who had served with her for years, who trusted her with their lives. But if we do not, Earth will fall. And I will not let that happen. The Jirsan and the Queen's ship met in fire. Both vessels were wounded. Both kept fighting. Sujin gave the order to ram, and the Jirsan crashed into the Queen's flagship with the force of a falling moon. Metal screamed. Explosions ripped through both ships. Sujin held onto her chair as the world came apart around her. And then, in the chaos, something beautiful happened. The asteroid belt came alive. Hidden defense platforms, weapons that humanity had built in secret over 3,000 years, activated all at once. Thousands of them, buried in rock and ice, waiting for this moment. They opened fire. The Queen's ship, trapped by the Jirsan, could not escape. Weapons from every direction struck her vessel. The massive flagship cracked, then broke, then exploded in a burst of light. The Queen was dead. Across the system, the Dravari swarm felt it. Their connection to their leader was severed. They did not know what to do. Some fled. Some kept fighting mindlessly. But their coordination was gone. The battle turned. By the time the stars came out over Earth that night, the Dravari were gone. Not defeated forever, some swarms escaped into the dark. But broken, scattered, no longer a threat. The cost was high. Thousands of ships destroyed. Millions of lives lost. The Jirsan was crippled, barely holding together. Admiral Sujin was alive, but wounded. But Earth stood. Humanity stood. The galaxy stood. 1 year later, Una returned to Earth. The planet was beautiful blue oceans, green forests, cities that sparkled in the sunlight. She walked through streets where children played and old people watched the sky with peaceful eyes. She found Sujin at a memorial wall. The admiral stood alone, looking at the names carved into stone. Thousands of names. Tai Wu's was among them. Ambassador Yuna, Sujin said without turning. Welcome to Earth. Thank you for seeing me. Yuna stepped forward to stand beside her. The Concord officially accepted humanity's membership today. You are one of us now, are we? Sujin's voice was soft. After everything? Yes. Yuna looked at the names on the wall. The past cannot be changed, but the future can. Your people showed us that. Sujin was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked, why did you fight for us? In the assembly, when everyone else wanted to let us die. Why did you stand? Yuna thought about it. She thought about Tai Wu's smile and Jian's gentle hands. She thought about human ships crossing the galaxy to save strangers. She thought about a species that had every reason to hate the universe, but chose to protect it instead. Because you showed me something, she said finally. You showed me that the darkness does not win. That no matter how hard things get, someone will always stand up. Someone will always fight. Someone will always walk into the fray. She looked at Sujin. That is what humanity means. And I wanted to be part of it. Sujin smiled. It was a real smile, warm and tired and full of hope. Then welcome, she said. Welcome to the family. Above them, the stars burned on ancient and eternal, waiting for whoever was brave enough to reach for them. And somewhere in the galaxy, a song echoed. An old folk song about mountains and rivers that last forever. A song that Sergeant Tai Wu's grandmother had taught him long ago. A song that humanity would never forget.